Welcome back to Citizen Weekend. And just before we took that break, I had introduced my panelists. Allow me to go ladies first this time round. We have Joanna LeBlanc joining us from Washington, D.C. And she is a partner of the Adomi Advisory Group. And she is, as I mentioned earlier, a trained lawyer on matters national security law and foreign policy. We also have in studio the Third Way Alliance Party leader, Ekuro Court. Not only does he wear that hat, he is a lawyer and he specializes in matters constitution, human rights, refugees. Good to have you in studio as well. There's another credential which is pertinent to the discussion on Haiti, and he has moved to court to challenge the deployment of Kenyan police to Haiti. We also have in studio the director of the Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies. That is, you must get Kanenje right.
Yes, that's correct.
Dr. Hassan Kanenje. I've been saying Kanenje. He's like, Kanenje. All right, so before we get into Haiti, you weighed in the other day on Twitter on this whole discount for the luxury jet that the president used on his state visit to the U.S. So there's now this debate. Should he have declared it as a gift? Can he, as a state officer, should he have accepted it as a gift, or did the president commit an illegality?
Well, yeah, by dint of the Chapter 6 of the Constitution, of course, he ought to have declared that he's been gifted this jet to travel to the United States, because he is a state officer, and there is a requirement that there has to be that declaration. So the president never did it. So yes, he acted outside the law. What if you argue that it was just a good bargain? No, not necessarily a gift? I don't think so. First of all, I think he lied openly to say that it's cheaper to fly a private jet than a commercial plane. This is not rocket science. I don't know if he necessarily said that, but let's get back. He said it was cheaper to fly a private jet compared to Kenya Airways, and he actually say that. No, what he said is, I think the jets were going for up to 70 million, so he had said now book KQ because he was not going to pay 70 million. You know that story only coming after the fact, after people have exposed, people have complained about his largesse. That's now he's coming, and even the explanation actually is not coherent. All right, so I'll press pause on that so that we stick to the matter at hand, which is Haiti. Here is what President William Ruto had to say on the legality of the deployment of our police officers to Haiti.
I think we've gone beyond the requirements of the law. It was sanctioned by the cabinet. It was sanctioned by both houses of parliament, the Senate and the National Assembly. The court proclaimed itself on how it should be done. The requirements of the court has been met. The court wanted an agreement between the government of Kenya and the government in Haiti. That was signed, and I witnessed it myself, between the Prime Minister, between the Minister for Security at that time, and myself and the Prime Minister in Haiti witnessed that agreement. And the same agreement has been adopted and ratified by the Transitional Presidential Council. I have received an agreement in writing. I wouldn't deploy unless that happened. In fact, I made it a requirement that the Transitional Presidential Council that came into office recently must endorse the agreement that had been signed by the government that was, just to make sure that we are on the same side. And I can confirm to you that I have received their concurrence in writing.
That interview with the BBC done on the 20th of May in the US. Your response?
First of all, I think the president is not very truthful to the people of Kenya and the world. The judge did not say, I was a petitioner in that against deployment. The judge did not say comply, do the agreement, whatever. In any case, let's go to the fundamentals. Under the Constitution of Kenya, Article 240 to be more specific, it has separated what is called the Defense Forces and the National Police Service. And the judge was very categorical that he cannot deploy the Kenya Police Service outside the jurisdiction of Kenya. Those are the final orders of the court. Now, having said that, in Section 107, 108, or 109 of the National Police Service Act, it gives the president some discretionary power to deploy the police. Okay? but upon himself satisfying himself that the conditions in the requesting country are similar to that in Kenya. Those are the words in the law. Now, the president never took that into consideration. What that also means is that he must satisfy himself that is it okay to deploy police service outside Kenya. Let's put it in context. I come from the northern part of this country, and insecurity is like, the sound of a gun is like breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us. So the president ought to have considered the fact that, okay, do we have enough police officers to deploy to another country? The question is, we don't have, because we are not even able to deal with our own internal terrorism. So
you're saying this is even beyond the legality of the issue? Beyond the legality,
and that's the spirit in the law, that you must satisfy yourself. People have asked questions. I remember, for example, Abdikadir asking the president while in Washington, I mean, there are schools closed in Baringo, parts of northern Kenya. Do we have this luxury of deploying 1,000 police officers? In any case, 1,000 police officers is like a drop in the ocean. We've had hundreds of thousands of peacekeeping missions before. And let me just correct the impression that is being created both by the Prime Cabinet Secretary. This is a treaty obligation. Okay? He says that Kenya police have been in Kosovo, Sierra Leone, Liberia.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, you don't seem to have had a problem with those ones because you didn't move to court in that case. What is it about this particular deployment?
Because those were under the UN mission. I've worked in Liberia, South Sudan, and Sierra Leone, so I know exactly how the UN mission operates.
All right, let me bring in Dr. Kanenje at this point. Almost slipped up. So how different is this mission from the UN mission he's talked about, or rather we've been told by the president, we've been told by the Prime Cabinet Secretary just now in Yugoslavia, Croatia, Angola, Namibia? How is this different?
I think part of the question Kenyans are having, and perhaps some people around the world, this is a UN-sanctioned mission, it's not a UN-funded mission. So it's a little bit different. And it depends a lot with regard to the coalition of the willing to be able to undertake that mission. And so I think the worry, and rightly so, that is emerging in quarters in the country and elsewhere perhaps, is how sustainable is this, and is it going to be something that is going to achieve the desired results outside the funding by the United Nations. Now, deploying forces of any kind, it's not exactly against the practice of Kenya per se, in part because peace diplomacy is a central plank of Kenya's foreign policy. And so that goes without saying that we're going to remain engaged both on the continent as well as outside the continent. But now, to the extent of the complexity, to do with the legality of it, of course, that is a question, that is above my pay grade. And that is why I leave it to my brother here, perhaps, to do justice to it. But generally, it is, from a strategic perspective, and those who are normally seized with Kenya's foreign policy and practice, it still falls in line with general practice of Kenya's foreign policy, and increasingly so in recent years, when Kenya is seeking to reclaim the initiative as a leader in the region as well as a leader internationally. Now, the dynamics and the nuances of how to go about it, of course, I think those are the questions that are being debated today.
All right, let's bring in Joanna from Washington, D.C. Joanna, is there a distinction between this being a UN-led mission, as Kenya has participated in before, and this being a UN-sanctioned mission? Is there a significant distinction?
Listen, first and foremost, for having me on. And I applaud President Ruto's commitment to helping the Republic of Haiti address its insecurity crisis by leading the mission to Haiti that has been sanctioned by the United Nations, right? And what I can tell you is that unlike many places in the world where the insecurity challenges are driven primarily by an ideology, Haiti, in this case, the insecurity that we see is driven primarily due to a lack of economic opportunities and failed foreign policy, as well as bad actors and lack of political will. So with Kenya, assuming that the Kenyan government work with partners on the ground that will provide assistance, you could have a situation where even before the deployment of the forces into the country, you can soften the field. And ultimately, if this is done properly, you're looking at a situation where not one bullet would be shot in the air. So while there are significant challenges, there are immense opportunities for President Ruto to show to the rest of the world what a fruitful collaboration could look like between two Black nations in particular. Because the reality is that, and this is why there are so many skepticism, previous interventions by the United States government, by the UN, have all failed, and they have failed miserably. But within this troubled past, there lies a great opportunity for President Ruto to show to the world what a prosperous security collaboration between two Black nations could look like, and hopefully one that would eventually morph into an economic relationship between the Republic of Haiti as well as Kenya.
All right, so Dr. Ekuro Court, Joanna says Kenya has, as other nations in the world, a moral obligation.
It's true, but to see, when you look at the Kenyan context itself, so we have a moral obligation in a country 12,000 miles away compared to a few kilometers northern Kenya, where there's serious insecurity. But listen, let's delve into the law.
But even as that has been the case, Kenya has deployed to other countries before.
Under the UN mission. This is not a UN mission. That's a fact. This is US-backed mission that used the United Nations to come up with that resolution 2699. But the truth for the matter is, listen, let's talk about the fundamentals. First of all, have you seen the agreement, the so-called reciprocal agreement between Kenya and Haiti?
No, I have not.
You have not. Why is it secret? Because going by the law, which President William Ruto is trying to use, is actually circumventing the order of the court. By saying,
it was approved by Parliament, so you would then presume that the people have had time to interact with the
So let's talk about our law. Our law requires that any reciprocal agreement must be published in the official Kenya Gazette. That hasn't happened. We don't even know this. In fact, somebody sent me an agreement 2 days ago, but it's in French. Why would an English-speaking country, Kiswahili-speaking country, sign a document in French? Why is that? So the law requires that there has to be publication in the official Kenya Gazette. There has to be a request from a democratically elected president. Under the laws of Haiti, a prime minister or Ariel Henry, as he then was, who was actually, in my view, an imposter. He wasn't even a prime minister anyway. His name had been forwarded, but before he was approved by Parliament in Haiti, which does not exist, that he assumed this office for close to 3 years. The constitution of Haiti is very clear that a prime minister can only hold forth for 90 days, within which period you actually organize for an election. Ariel Henry overstayed his welcome. And when he came here, he did not even have the capacity to commit the Republic of Haiti into a treaty obligation, such as the one between Kenya and Haiti. So that agreement, as far as I'm concerned, is a bogus agreement. It has no force of law.
That is one of the issues that will be delved into in court, because I know you're seeking contempt of court orders.
Yeah. Well, no, we are beyond those. So contempt of court order is against the deployment by whoever makes the decision. But what I'm telling you is that there has to have been a request from a democratically elected president in Haiti. That is the law.
All right.
That request we've not seen. The reciprocal agreement has not been published, So, and I remember Justice Chacha Mwita posing some of these questions to the people defending the government. Where is the agreement? They never produced. They never produced a Gazette notice. So the whole thing is an illegality ab initio. Over and above that, I feel pained that America is going to use another black nation for purposes of occupying another black nation.
Okay, speaking of that, you transition me to my next question, which is this, Dr. Kanenje. We had a Brazil-led force on ground, yes, a UN mission, between 2004 and 2017. They were there for 13 years. What is Kenya going to do differently, in your view?
I think that's an important question. And Part of it, and what Dr. Akot here has mentioned, has also served to color the perceptions, not just of people in Kenya, but also people, in Port-au-Prince, some people, and you saw some protests and demonstrations in Washington, D.C. But I think one thing that is important to remember, today we were celebrating 61 years of self-eternal rule, Madaraka Day, and congratulations to Kenyans for that. Haiti is 220 years, old of independence. Mm-hmm. And it's also a country that has gone and has seen some of the worst, times of any country you can imagine. Heavily indebted, to former colonial masters, and has pretty much been a pawn and a playing field, for other actors. And that, I think, has served also to build the kind of resentment that you see, especially against the major powers and the big powers, who are accused, for better or for worse, of having contributed to the tragedy we see today in Haiti. And so, at a time when no one was paying attention, there is an increasing, I think, desire, and I think not just from Africans, because the question of Haiti was being discussed in the AU, several years back, with regard, especially after the tragedy of 2009, is what can African countries and Africa do? And so that, in part, has informed some of the thinking. I'm not holding.
So you agree with Joanna on that point?
Yeah, it has informed part of the thinking, because it's not just actually Kenya that has been thinking and not in that direction. It's just that many countries, while they think of doing something from the continent, they just do not have capacity to do it. Now, of course, I think the complication comes because of U.S. active engagement in the whole, saga, and the perception that perhaps Nairobi is being used, as a puppet, of Washington to do Washington's dirty job. But generally, Kenya emerging as a very Pan-African country, and especially from the days of the Uhuru presidency and now transition to Ruto presidency, it has been selling itself as a Pan-African country. And not just a Pan-African for people who are domiciled on this continent, but those who are of African gene pool beyond, the continent. And so I think there is a sense in which, from a moral perspective, the Kenya's presidency or Kenya's government can be able to justify that. Of course, managing perceptions with regard to who is behind what, and with regard to the genuine interest, for instance, of Kenya in Haiti. Of course, Kenya being a democratic country, we expect that discussion is going to continue. But to the extent that we also have an obligation to the people of our gene pool, I think it's something that should not be argued about.
All right, Joanna, wrap this conversation up for us. There have been several developments. We have Gary Cornell, who has come in as a Prime Minister. We also saw, when Henri could not get back home from Kenya, that the two main gangs, G9, GPEP, joined forces and are quote-unquote now. How does that change things?
First and foremost, before I answer your question, I wish to reiterate that President Ruto's commitment to leading this mission to Haiti should be applauded. And the whole notion that President Ruto and his administration is being used as a pawn by the United States is rather insulting to the leadership in Kenya. I think that the Kenyan government has its own position on this matter, and they saw that the country of Haiti needed the support to help address the insecurity crisis, and therefore Kenya stepped up to the plate, and that is something that should be applauded. But as it relates to the different gangs joining forces, I think that before Kenya could even go into the country, it is incredibly important to engage with partners and who are familiar with the terrain, who are familiar with some of these various gangs, to have a dialogue, to have a conversation. Because if Kenya merely goes in without engaging the gangs, Kenya may not necessarily get the intended outcome. But if you are working with partners who understand the intricacies of Haitian politics, who understand the ground, to soften the ground so that the deployment could be one that is smooth, I think that it would be successful. And I don't think Kenya has has any other option but to be successful. And I think that the Ruto administration will be successful in this mission to not only help the Republic of Haiti address the insecurity crisis, but also to ultimately be able to organize free, fair, transparent, and inclusive elections in 2025. And as my co-panelists indicated earlier, Haiti is one that has a very rich history. The country gained its independence in 1804 through a bloody revolution with France. And Haiti's liberation movement was not just about Haitians liberating themselves from the oppression and suppression of France. It was also about liberating Black folks from all over the world. In fact, the country amended its constitution in 1805 to make it such that anybody who is Black who were to step foot on Haiti's soil will be considered free. A white man could not own land in the country nor be a slave master. So in essence, those sort of laws severely undermine the notion of white supremacy. And Haiti's liberation was a beacon of liberation for not just Haiti, but Black people all over the world. So Haiti is now on its knees, and Haiti needs support. And I applaud the Ruto administration for stepping up to the plate and wanting to support the Haitian people in finding security into the country. But it is incredibly important that President Ruto and his administration work with people on the ground who understand the intricacies of Haitian politics, who understand the internal affairs of the country to ensure that this mission will be a success. And it would not just be a success
complex
for
issue,
President Ruto and the Kenyan
people. It is
people,
indeed a very complex issue. And thank you, Joanna, for those remarks. But I do want to also invite Dr. Kurokot, Dr. Hassan Kanenje to make their final remarks as well. And Joanna, it is worth noting that we have Guy Philippe, who has entered the picture, one of the leaders of the 2004 coup. He has expressed an interest in getting into the presidency and calling for amnesty for the gangs. But your final remarks, having listened to Joanna in 30 seconds.
I think for me, really, is that first thing we need to do is to leave Haiti alone. The problem in Haiti has been deliberate destabilization by foreign forces. If you look at the history from the French, the Americans, the Canadians, the Brazilians, and now America again. So unfortunately, and I will say this without mincing my words, Kenya is being used as a conduit to go and recolonize Haiti. Haiti is being painted, has been given this negative image as a poor country where people practice voodoo, but we also know that it's very rich, and that's exactly the interest Americans have.
Is it very rich? It's been deforested. Agriculture, it has been brought to its knees. Well, Dr. Kanenje, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree indeed. Haiti is a very complex theater, and but I think I may not stretch it, to Kenya colonizing it, recolonizing it as such.
No, Kenya being used to recolonize. No, not necessarily Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya's intentions generally, they're coming from a good place. But what I think is going to be important is I think for us, especially as government and leadership, to explain to the Kenyan people with regard to what are the actual objectives there and why Kenya is going, because it is something that is actually good that Kenya can assist our brothers and sisters there be able to live in peace, even as we struggle with our own challenges. Even if we have little, I think it's helpful to share with others.
All right, and I will leave it on that note. You came off as a bit of a skeptic there. But I want to thank Dr. Kurokot, party leader, Third Way Alliance.
As long as we don't follow the law, for me, it doesn't go well with me.
All right, party leader, Third Way Alliance. We've also had with me in a studio, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director, Horn International Institute for International Studies. And joining us, thank you very much, all the way from Washington, D.C., we had Joanna LeBlanc, who is a partner, Adomi Advisory Group, and she is a trained lawyer in the issues to do with foreign policy as well as national security. Thank you all very much. We continue with stories on the other side of this break.